From seed to shipment, from small business to big sale, this is Trade Routes. We're your hosts, Addie and Tiffany. Every month, we talk about how a product produced in the Western U.S. makes its way to global markets. We also dive deeper into specific aspects of international trade. Get your trail mix ready because on today's episode, we're talking about dried fruits. We'll be joined by Karla Gutierrez, Global Commodities Account Manager at Mariani Packing Company. Let's dig into the story of how dried fruits from the Western U.S. are getting their day in the sun overseas.
All right, we are back with another month and another new theme here on Trade Routes, and this month's theme is dried fruits. So why are we talking dried fruits this month? Well, it is summertime, and a lot of fruits in our region are hitting their peaks right now. I'm a big fan of all the summer fruits, so really excited for this episode in particular. But today we'll be talking to Karla from Mariani Packing Company about a lot of Mariani's specialty products like raisins and prunes, whose harvests are typically around that July-August timeframe that we're in right now. Of course, across our full Western U.S. region, we grow tons of different types of fruit products, but a lot of our fresh fruit here in the U.S. tends to stay in the domestic market because that fresh fruit doesn't have a very long shelf life. Dried fruit, on the other hand, does have a much longer shelf life, so it makes for a really great exported product. And it can go all around the world and obviously have that long shelf life to maintain its value for a longer time. And we'll get into this more with Karla and talk all things about exports and dried fruit. But both at home and abroad, dried fruit can be sold as a snack food, and then it's also used as an ingredient for a lot of other value-added products too. And then we're often seeing dried fruit, both domestically and abroad, as a premium product that's packaged really nicely too.
Yeah, it really gives companies in that space like a lot of options with how to diversify their operations. So when I was researching this episode, I was looking on Euromonitor at the trade data, and I saw that the Rusada region in 2025 exported over $157 million worth of dried fruits. That's a lot of dried fruit.
Yeah, a huge industry.
Yeah. Bigger than I realized. But it goes in so many things like granola and cereal and trail mix, baked goods too.
Oh yeah, all over.
And I also learned a very fun fact while I was researching the episode about why, we talk about a plum, which is also a prune. We talk about a grape, which is also a raisin. Why do they have different names? And this goes back to the Norman conquest of England by the French in 1066, so over 1,000 years ago. French became the language of the nobles in the land, whereas English remained the language of the common people. And over the years, the two languages began to blend together. We have a lot of words in English that are French. And so fresh fruits were typically referred to by their English name, aka grape, and dried fruits took on their French name, which was for grapes, raisin, which is where we got raisin, and prune, which became the dried version of a plum.
Interesting.
So with that linguistic lesson, let's get into the interview.
Welcome, Karla. Thank you so much for joining us on Trade Routes. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
Yeah, of course. We're going to dive right into our questions here. So you're with Mariani Packing Company, and of course that company has been around for over 100 years. You've got a long history. Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of Mariani Packing Company, how it got started, and how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, of course. So this year we're actually celebrating 120 years. And something more exciting about that is that actually we just had the fifth generation family member start with our company last month.
Cool.
So that is pretty cool. Just because it's still, people find it hard to believe when we say we're a family-owned company and it's a fifth generation. There's a fact, most family establishments fall off after like the third generation. So I think the family is really prideful, that it's still going. So the origin of it, so the family came from Croatia in 1906. So they started as a farming business, and from there it just grew, it just grew from just farming all the dried fruit to then, hey, we can package the dried fruit, to then selling it and then selling it local. If you guys have ever seen pictures of dried fruit back in the day in the small little see-through bags, almost like a Ziploc bag. So that's how they started, packing the fruit. And then from there, it just grew. And then they were like, well, there's opportunities in cereals. And then 120 years later, now it's just, it's just evolved to this really big thing where now we have, a factory in Wisconsin, some in Northern California, some in Central, and then in our headquarters where I'm at, in Vacaville. But yeah, the origin of it was started by Paul Mariani. Just had a dream to come to the United States. And actually, the family has to tell the story. His love, Victoria, she had moved to the United States prior to 1906. So really, his dream was to follow her. And then from there started Mariani Packing.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah,
that's such a sweet story.
It's such an American dream story. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And that who doesn't love and who doesn't love that American dream, right? So,
Absolutely.
so they love to tell the story how his love turned into this big company.
Yeah, that's so sweet. And so cool that you're going into your 5th generation with the company now too. Like that's such an incredible success story for family businesses and something, like you said, you don't see very often. So really, really cool to see how well that's working out for the Mariani family.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree so too.
And it seems like you have been with the company for a while as well. Over a decade, if my facts are correct. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the business and a little bit more about what your role is?
Yeah, definitely. So I just celebrated my 11 years with the company. So yeah, I've been there. I've been there quite some time. So interesting enough, I was just, needed a part-time job. I was in the process of becoming a correctional officer, so nothing to do with dried fruit. I started in operations, and then from operations, my story is kind of interesting in the company. Like I said, it was just a gig of I was cleaning containers. From there, I got moved into actually the production lines, and then I got promoted into the offices, and then I just kept growing. Then I really started liking, business, and then I went into customer service where I would deal with all the international accounts. So I had to learn, about international trade documents that are needed, to sell into different markets. And I really like that. And then, as you guys can tell, I'm a talker. So I'm like, my passion, I always kind of knew was sales, and I was very vocal about that. So then from there on, I moved on to a marketing role. And then I was in our marketing department for about 4 or 5 years, where I got to learn our CPG side of the business and all the retail stuff. And then my current role, Steve Souza, who's one of the family members, he pulled me. He's like, I want you to do sales for me. I'm bilingual, so I speak Spanish. So it just made sense for me to focus on, the Central, South America, and Mexico markets, especially because of the language. And yeah, and now 11 years later, a couple departments. I know operations. I know the customer service side of it. I know the packaging side of it, what it takes to, create a product into the market. Now I can't go into a retail store and look at anything the same because I know what it takes, to produce that. So yes, that's my story with the company so far.
Super cool. I mean, that's kind of an American dream story in itself as well.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. And, it's like just opportunities and just not being shy to, hey, I want to learn more. What can you teach me? Or is there a different department where I can keep growing,
Yeah.
My career went a whole different way.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So your current role is Global Commodities Account Manager.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in that role and what it looks like to really build and maintain those relationships with international buyers?
Yeah, definitely. So my biggest goal in that role is obviously to grow our business. We're a vertically integrated company, so our core commodities is prunes, raisins, and cranberries. So my goal is to find companies to move that volume through, right? Whether it's in domestically or internationally, and looking for, companies that are doing trail mixes, cereals, and just where it best fits for our product. Then I also have a kind of a unique situation because I have all that marketing background. I work a lot with your guys' team with USADA, and then I also plan all our trade shows. So then what I'm constantly doing is just looking at, okay, what market do we still need to grow? What trade show makes sense? That's a little bit of all that I do right now in my current sales job.
Very cool. Sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. I'm
Definitely,
sure they keep you
yeah.
busy. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So you mentioned briefly that Mariani is vertically integrated in some of the bigger fruits that it deals with. Can you tell us a little bit about that, especially how it relates to an advantage for exporting and maybe how you adjust in years where the crop yields maybe aren't as high? Yeah, so a little bit about vertical integration and how that relates to the exporting game.
No, yeah, definitely. So this was really important to the family, I think, to be vertically integrated in those 3 core commodities, especially because, when you're not vertically integrated, you have to depend on the middlemen for all the processes, right? So for them, we just wanted to be able to go from our growers all the way to where we package it and just be able to control that whole process, right? So for example, in 2011, Mariani purchased Urban Packing. So that was a packing company in Wisconsin for cranberries. And then that made us, vertically integrated. because now we're growing the cranberries, now we're drying them, packing them, and then actually 2021, I think, then they bought cold storage units because cranberries have to be frozen for 3 months before you can produce them.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
we
know that.
harvest them fresh. Yeah, we most people don't know that, but we harvest them fresh, and then they have to freeze for 3 months, right? They bought cold storage units so we can even control where we're storing them. So that's the importance, right, of being vertically integrated. We just can control our own fate. It's up for Mother Nature, right? The crop every year, you just don't know. Interesting enough, like for example, this year organics was really bad crop, right? It's becoming harder and harder to produce them on the cranberry side. So this year we had no inventory. The good thing about being vertically integrated is that, okay, well, we have all these sets of growers, we can go here, there, and then just still control a little bit our faith, right? Even in situations like this year. And same thing with the prunes and raisins. Those come out of California. So we have a facility in Central California where we grow the raisins and then we store them, clean them before we bring them to Vacaville. But even then, we rely on our own trucking. So it's just making sure that we can just rely on ourselves with everything. And, because if you're vertically integrated and something's not working, it's easier to fix it than it is to call a different company that you're working with and try to fix their processes in their companies. And from an exporting side, it's also helped us because there's times where you have a customer that doesn't want you to produce the prunes. We would call them NC, natural condition. So, we get them straight from the trees, we dry them in our ovens, and then we export them like that, and then they'll process it. So that's really important too, because if we weren't vertically integrated, we would be buying prunes already produced, right? With added moisture. So we wouldn't have that NC product. So just small little things like that you don't think long term, but really does help out on a vertically integrated situation.
Yeah, it sounds like if there's a problem in a vertically integrated chain, well, it's your problem as opposed to having to rely on somebody else to solve the problem. Your problem, your priority.
Right. And it's like, hey, let's all stop what we're doing, pivot, and let's get this, get this fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked a little bit about the processing process for some different fruits. Can you get into that a little bit deeper and tell us kind of how maybe the drying process, for example, is different for different types of fruit products?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll start with raisins, for example. Raisins are actually dried on the vine. So in Central California, yeah. So they're on the vine and they just dry.
Okay.
They dry and there's nothing, and it's literally just they dry and that's it. And then a machine mechanically comes and removes them. Yeah, most people don't know that. So I always like to just point out how simple it is just to dry a raisin.
With solar power.
Exactly. Yeah, literally. And then prunes are also, we grow them on the trees, and then prunes are harvested. We let them dry as well. Once the fruit starts, we start seeing prunes, plums fall from a tree. Then they start knowing that it's time. And then mind you, the growers, they're so good at knowing they can just look at a tree and know when it's ready, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens with that, you have a tree full of plums, and then you have a shaker that comes in and then just starts shaking the tree. Literally. And then all the prunes, plums start falling into the bucket. And then from there, they get taken into our facility in Central California. And that facility, we put them into tunnels, and then they dry there for about 11 hours. They come out, and then they just smell so good. You can tell it's my favorite fruit. On the cranberry side, like I mentioned, those are a little bit more unique because, like I said, we have to freeze them after we harvest them fresh for about 3 months. And then after we do that, then they have to go and get washed. Then they get sliced because they're frozen. And then they have to be almost cooked. So you pull all the moisture out of it, right?
Very interesting. You talked about the shaker for the plum trees. I've never seen a shaker used on fruit trees. I grew up around a lot of nut orchards and saw shakers out in the field or in the orchards shaking nut trees. But I never thought about it being used for fruit too. I would have assumed fruit maybe is too sensitive of a product for that.
If they're being dried, it probably doesn't matter if there's like some bruising on them.
Correct. And one thing is, once a plum hits the floor, we cannot touch it. So we always tell people that too, because you said you grew up around trees, so did I. I'm in farming town, but people will go and pick them up from the floor, and we're like, we don't do that. That's like a no in the farming practice.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I know Mariani has a line of like ready to eat processed products, and then you guys also supply dried fruit for like manufacturing, right, to other companies?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that balance of kind of the ready to eat side versus the ingredient bulk product side?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's fair to say that Mariani is split into three equal thirds, right? I think one of the biggest ones is our cereal and ingredients business. So as I mentioned, our raisins are a big seller for us. So that side of the business for cereal, we've been selling to Kellogg's and Calbee for over 30 years. So if you guys know the Raisin brand, a lot of those raisins are ours in that
Oh,
cereal.
cool.
That's a big part of the business. And then for Calbee, that's a really big Japanese cereal company. So they're the equivalent of Kellogg's. So on the international side, it's also helped us a lot having that relationship with them because we sell into that cereal internationally as well. So I would say cereal's one part of it, and then we have our branded, which is our Mariani brand that you guys will see at the retail store. And then we also do a lot of private labels. So normally, if you see our brand at a retail store, you're also going to see our items, but in the private label packaging. And then the third, and then part of the business, which is the one that I focus on, and that would be our ingredients and then our bulk, which that is sold, like I mentioned earlier, we're pretty much selling it to other companies that are packing, trail mixes, baking, just all sorts of things. So that's huge too. So I would say, like I said, cereal, CPG, and then bulk for people selling it, putting it into ingredients in trail mixes.
Very cool. So it sounds like both domestically and internationally, you're working with a lot of different types of customers and end users for your products.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Very cool.
So, on the international front, what kind of trends are you seeing in dried fruit products right now? And is that different from what we're seeing in the US at the moment?
Yeah, so funny you asked that because as I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge prune lover and I'll keep talking about them and
Team Prune.
yay prunes, yeah. But domestically, prunes just have such a negative connotation, right? You try to hand out a bag of prunes at a trade show, and people are like, no, no. And it's funny, but we know about prunes. Actually, we were the first to launch probiotic prunes in the United States, actually at all in the market. And we take a lot of pride on that. And it's actually our number one selling item. So comparing this international, we know about probiotics here in the States, right? We know that it's in food. It's a functional thing. Internationally, though, it's barely picking up. So it's really interesting because we just had a dinner with some dietitians that came from Mexico, and they were just so shocked that prunes could have probiotics, which was really cool because it just shows that we just haven't even opened those doors yet. And same thing in other markets. Like I said, I handle Central America and South, but I get to travel with other colleagues that handle other markets. But we just got back from Gulf Food earlier this year, and same thing. Like people are now starting to be interested in prunes, and then also the probiotic prunes because you're trying to see a lot of benefits. Cranberries have always been popular. Everybody uses them on salads or toppings and stuff. But yeah, I think prunes are really growing. And then from a raisin, I think raisins are a unique product. You either love them or you don't. You either want them in your cereal or you don't. It's more of a trail mix. Who doesn't love a trail mix with the raisin in there?
I love
but
them
not
in
too many.
granola. That's my go-to.
Yeah, same here. Same here. When stay at hotels, that's the first thing I put in. There's raisins.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're a big raisin household too. I have a toddler and she loves raisins, so she eats them every day.
Oh, that's great.
So on the international side of things, what primary markets are you guys targeting right now?
So that's an interesting question. So on the international side, like I said, our team's divided by different markets, right? So like I mentioned, the markets that I manage, and then I have colleagues who live in Europe, and then they manage, the Europe markets, and then I have a colleague in Southeast Asia, and then he manages Asia. So the way that we're always doing it, we always want to grow. I can speak for my market, Central and South America. For us, it's harder to grow those markets just because U.S. products are really good, and we have really good farming practices and everything. So we tend to be a little bit higher on cost. So we struggle in those markets. So even though we are in those markets, we're always targeting the markets we're in, if that makes sense, right? Because we still haven't grown them to the capacity that we want to grow them to.
Sure.
And it's just getting consistent buyers. So you might have, a good sell in Central America for a year, but then the rate exchange changes, right? And then you have to pivot. So now you no longer can sell to Central America. So it's like, okay, now you're talking to your colleagues. Okay, how's the sales in Asia? Well, they're going great. So we're always kind of talking to each other, and then also just seeing, what makes sense right now, or what markets do we want to focus on. And then because we are in global commodities, any little thing can affect us, right? Anything that happens around the world, okay, we can no longer sell there. We need to pivot. So it's just constantly quarterly meeting, and then just seeing what opportunities are there and what markets have we not gotten into that we want to grow. I know right now South Africa is one of them. I think there's good opportunities. We've met a lot of people at shows that want product that never purchased from us. They purchase from Europe. So we're trying to enter markets that would normally purchase from other countries, just because logistically and economically it makes sense.
Sure. It sounds like there's tons of opportunity all around the globe for your guys' products, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, very cool. I should have asked this up front, but how long has Mariani been exporting for?
Oh man, I think it's been about 50 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
very
been-
cool.
yeah.
Long time.
It's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
because I know we've had our like I mentioned, Japan. We have a really good relationship with the company there, and I know we've been doing business with them for over 35. So I know it's been a lot.
Right.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. It's good to have all that experience and history there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it seems like the diversification in the types of goods that y'all are able to offer from literally the exact same fruit, but different avenues really gives y'all a lot of opportunity to figure out what works best for the business at any given point in time, whatever the international circumstances are.
Yeah. No, and that's the good thing to point out, because like in the States, for example, we love Thanksgiving and cranberries, right? That people buy them for cranberry sauce. So things like that, where I'm like, okay, during our holiday seasons, we're going to focus on US because we know what we purchase. And then you get other markets that they prunes or dates during certain months. Well, we're going to try to sell as many dates as we can. So it's just even that, just playing with the holidays as well. That's also very helpful, because certain cultures eat certain fruits during their holidays. So that even just knowing that information is very helpful.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned earlier that you help prep a lot of the trade shows and trade missions. Can you tell us a little bit about how you prepare for those, and kind of what signs you see when you're at a trade mission or a trade show that you think, oh, I think this one might lead to some sales?
Yeah. So the way that I do it, so I literally just log on to the Wasata website.
Love
and see
it.
and then just see what shows are available. We have our shows that we know are good for us. Like we attend Gold Food every year. That's a good one. Anuga, we always go to it. And we know that because that's always where we're going to see our customers. And we know that we're always going to grow our business. And then, for example, this year, there was a trade show in Mexico that I just came back 2 weeks ago, Anton. So for that one, I'm trying to grow sales, as I was mentioning to you girls, in Mexico, especially with raisins and prunes. So with that, I'm like, well, that makes sense, and there's the show available. So just first is just seeing what's available for the year, and then how can we benefit from it? Because, in every company, you have to show a return on investment. So are we going to be able to grow that market? Is there even opportunities, or does it make sense to not go?
Very cool. So got a bonus question that I just thought of. Is there any big major challenge that you're seeing with the export side of the business that maybe is especially relevant in this time period? And how are you guys working to address any challenges that come up on the export front?
Yeah, so I think our challenges started about a year ago when all the tariffs, hit. That has impacted our company tremendously, but I know the family's been working really hard on not letting it affect the business. So the way that affected our business is a lot of companies stop pulling some of their containers, their products, because of, the high cost. Right now, thankfully, we're back to normal. But even with the oil situation that's happening right now, the cost of fuel is extremely high. So we want to sell internationally, but as soon as you provide a rate of what it's going to cost, to get it from point A to B, it's tremendous. It's like tripled. And even us on our website, you saw, we sell mango, we sell products from around the world, right? And we're importing and exporting, daily. So that's affected us on both ends. And then even for us to bring in product, it's the cost right now with fuel, tariffs, you name it. It's gone up really, really hard. So that's why I think also the family does a really good job of spreading, everything evenly, because when the export side is dealing with that stuff, then that's when we rely on our domestic team to hit the ground running because, hey, we need more support on the domestic side or we need to move stuff domestically because we know that we might not get the deal internationally because of all the high and added costs. So yeah, so it really has affected us, but but we're doing the best that we can, and I'm very grateful for them because they always make sure that they notify us and let us know, hey, we've got it handled. You guys just keep doing your job. We'll deal with it, right? It's the nature of the business, I guess, especially doing exporting.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's awesome to have that support from your leadership. And then we've mentioned this in other episodes too, but having that, the domestic market you can rely on and the international markets and being able to balance those as things get tough on one side or the other is a really key advantage, I think, to being in the export game and selling domestically, is you have a little bit more flexibility there.
Yeah, definitely. And just going back to that vertically integrated, and to your point, I know when I started 12 years ago, we would purchase raisins, from Argentina, other parts of the world. And even that, when things like this in the world happen and there's challenges, well, then you can get into a situation where you can no longer purchase from them, right? So I think that it just backs up this whole vertical integration that the family keeps buying more and more fields, because then we're relying on ourselves. So when things like this happen, we just have to go down to Central California and pick them up, right? The raisins, which is only about 4 hours from our headquarters, instead of relying on a container and those added costs.
Yeah, that's great.
In our deep dive episode later this month, we're going to be talking about organic standards in the US and kind of how those translate abroad. How does Mariani manage those regulatory differences? Because I know y'all have organic products. Do you take those abroad? How does that work?
So with organics, every market's different, right? So what I had to do to register it into Mexico compared to a colleague in Asia, it's all very different. But we really lean on our team, our compliance team, with their expertise. And I know there's the thing called the Food Safety Modernization Act that was implemented about 15, 16 years ago, which requires extensive documentation. So we rely on things like that, or there's an organization called INC where they'll give us information on, hey, we need to register this organic product. Can you let us know what's needed? So then they'll help us with that kind of stuff. So from a compliance and regulatory and documentation, it's getting harder, to be honest, to register the organic, just because every country is constantly changing their requirements.
Are there specific countries that you export to that you feel like do have that demand where they like organic more?
Yes, definitely. Taiwan. We sell 40 ounce raisins at Costco, Taiwan.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's an item I helped develop from a product management standpoint, and it's been like at least 5 years, and it's still selling really well. So we don't sell organic raisins unless it's to Costco, Taiwan, because any organic that we have, it just goes to them. So yeah, so there's definitely markets that love organics and they purchase them.
Yeah, Taiwan is a big partner for Wusada region products.
Yes, they are.
I think that's great that they love their organic raisins as well.
Yeah, no, they do. And then of course, domestically, there's a demand for organics. I can say for Central and South America, I don't see it as much. But yeah, it's more the Asian countries, and then some of Europe too as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So kind of moving into a fun question. You mentioned prunes are your favorite. You love prunes. We love prunes too. What is your ideal trail mix looking like these days? Do you put prunes in there?
I do not. Actually, that's interesting. I never thought about my ideal trail mix. My ideal trail mix would be peanuts, raisins, a little bit of chocolate, and that's it, honestly.
Yeah, classic.
Solid.
Love it.
Yeah, just I'm a simple gal.
Where are you taking your trail mix? What trail?
Ooh, actually keep one in my backpack at all times.
Okay.
So you're
Good.
driving, snack a little. I just have trail mix. I have trail mix in the office. I have trail mix at home. So I'm taking it everywhere,
The
And I
daily
also
trail.
carry prunes. Yeah, exactly, in my trails.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're almost at the end of our question list here, but we just wanted to kind of wrap up with any final thoughts you have or any advice you have for exporters. Anything we didn't cover. Is there anything that you want exporters to know?
I would say definitely leaning on USADA. I know that we've had a partnership for over 10 years. Just lean on people that can help export. We're a little bit more seasoned company, so we've kind of know where to go. But you meet so many new companies at these trade shows. Just doing the research and then just, like I said, knowing where it does make sense. I think all of us want our products to be everywhere because that'd be a perfect world. But really, where do you want to spend your resources, and where does it make sense financially? Where can you actually grow it, and just kind of doing that homework. And then, like I said, yeah, just relying on you guys. I mean, you guys do a lot of inbound, outbound trade shows, so there's just so much resource out there, and just using them, yeah, or even trying a market. But I would definitely say by starting by that, and then just trying to grow from there. And it's exciting to see other companies also grow as we're trying to grow too. I think we're all in this together, and it's really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. We think it's exciting too. Well, Karla, thank you so much for joining us on Trade Routes. We are so excited that we got to have you on and talk a little bit about Mariani's history and your guys' experience with exporting, your role within the company. So thank you for all the great insights you shared today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, ladies. You guys are wonderful, and I love the podcast. I think that's so cool.
Thanks.
Can't wait to check it out. But yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on this journey from farm to far away. We'll see you next time for more stories about small businesses and big opportunities. I'm Tiffany, and this is Addie, and you've been listening to Trade Routes, a podcast by the Western United States Agricultural Trade Association. Like what you've heard? Consider subscribing, leaving us a review to help others discover these stories, or reaching out at marketing@wusada.org. To learn more or explore export opportunities for your own business, visit us at wusada.org. That's WUSATA.org.